Thank you. Thank you very much for saying yes to this craziness. This is our first episode. Again, today we just want to talk a little bit about sexual health, the importance of having an understanding about sexual health, and it's a topic that we sometimes don't talk about, especially with the young adults. We pretend like that's something that doesn't exist when it's obvious there. It's obviously there. And it's nice to understand, and especially if we have a background related to sexual health, as yourself. I know that you were a teacher before, correct?
Right. Yeah. At San Jose State. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, for a couple of years. Yeah. So I taught for 2 years at San Jose State in the Public Health and Recreation Department. And that's kind of how I got to know about a little bit more about HOPE AACI, actually. It was in the community health promotion class. And we partner with outside agencies to give students their first real experience of like what public health is, kind of how that works. So I love teaching that class because it was really great content, but also you got to give them like real world experience, which makes the learning even more meaningful and impactful for students.
Correct. Yeah. Very true. And I understand that you, before that, you were teaching something related to sexual health.
Yeah. So I taught the community health promotion. I also taught the capstone class. And then before that, I had my own business. And I did a lot of, which was like totally unrelated. And so when I was in grad school, I started doing a lot of like other volunteering experiences and that sort of thing to build up my experience in sexual health. So I didn't so much teach a sexual health class as I did like develop that for my program plan and do my research on that and a little bit more like presented to APHA and did some research opportunities.
And how has it changed your perspective related to sexual health?
Yeah. So a big thing for me was before I got my master's in public health, I really felt like I was like, I wanted to like give back and do more like in the world generally, which I know sounds like a big lofty goal, but I was like kind of missing that, like, meaning. And I've always had an interest in sexual health. Back when I was studying occupational therapy, I remember like working with people that had like hip replacements. And I'm like, who's talking to them about like how to have sex safely after hip replacement? So all of these different things kind of came into mind and for me. And I feel like it's an interest I've always had. But public health, that degree and giving that experience gave me more of an opportunity to actually like do it a little bit more. And my current job, I get to work a lot with students, we have a peer advocacy model. So it's peer-to-peer learning. And so we work with our peer health educators to build content and teach them content that we have developed. We try to work together. And then they teach it to the students on campus. So getting back to your question, what I discovered was really we need to start with the basics. So I kind of assumed that there would be this like baseline knowledge college students would have coming in. But really, I think the best place to start is at the very beginning, like talking about the very basics of sex. Like, what actually is it? How do we define it? How do people define it differently? Why is it important to know about that? And then like the basics of even with our students our peer health educators, how do you use a condom correctly? What are the different types? And so that's really something that I think is new for me is realizing that it's okay to start at the beginning, because I felt like maybe I needed to come in and like develop these like really lofty programs that went really in depth into things. But really where we need to start is kind of at the beginning.
That is very true. That is one of those things that we have noticed, that sometimes we think that we need to go all the way to, something complicated, and the basics are very important. One of the things that we definitely notice or we have seen is that a lot of people do not know how to wear a condom properly. And it's very surprising to see that. It's very surprising that it's students that you might think, they have experience of college students. They might have had a good background related to sexual education, they don't even know how to wear a condom properly. So it's one of those things that we definitely need to approach and say like, okay, so let's not complicate ourselves and go back to the basis. What do you mean? How do you see sex? What is the meaning for you when we say sex?
Right.
How comfortable are you with this? Have you had a conversation with your sexual partner? Because sometimes we have sexual interactions with others, and without asking their status, or if they have gotten tested before. Right. What are the things that you really like about in bed, or what are the things that you don't really like in bed? To have that communication, and it seems like a taboo. It seems like, oh yes, let's go and have sex, but let's avoid the conversation before or after. Right. And that could have a really direct connection with our mental health. Yes, it's very interesting to see that, and one of those things that we as a program, we try to provide those services. We try to kind of like making sure that we understand more about sexual health, just the basics, as you mentioned. Yep. To understand, we've tried to put together like a guide with different condom sizes, because again, just the basics, saying like, oh, you know what, if that condom size might not work for me, and my partner probably doesn't feel comfortable using a condom, but there's an internal condom. A lot of people doesn't know that there is an internal condom, right, for us. So it's just one of those things that it's nice to see. And I know that your program is providing safe sex materials as well. Yes. Around the campus of San Jose State. How does that work?
Yeah. So the main location to get supplies is in the Student Wellness Center, first floor in the Wellness Lounge. And that is a service that's available to all current students. They can get supplies every day, free, safer sex supplies every day that they come in. We also have a mail order part of that program as well. But we're trying to increase the reach. And so not just expecting students to come to us, but like where else can we have that? So this last semester, we piloted a program with our condom cart, and we had it in different locations around campus to see like where were the hot spots. No surprise, housing was a hot spot. The recreation center was also a really big one. Student union wasn't really, and I think maybe it's because there's just a lot of people walking around there. They're like, I don't really want to be seen at the condom cart. But the other spot that we have introduced it now is the food pantry as well. And that has been extremely popular. And so we have to limit the amount because it's so popular. They run out in like a couple of days. Oh, yeah. So we're like, okay, set amount per week. And then we restock every Friday. But so that's been kind of exciting to see that like students, there's definitely an interest and a need. And students, when they go to those other locations, we're sending them back to us because the condom cart, obviously it's a little smaller. So we don't have all of the supplies on there. But I'm kind of playing around with maybe changing that up a little bit. And so they can come to the Wellness Lounge and get more if they want. So
that's really cool. And that's one of those things that it's very interesting is that if you put them in where there's a lot of people walking around, we don't feel comfortable just getting a condom. Right. And it's so interesting because we feel that that doesn't apply to us. That and it's very easy for us to kind of like unintentionally to kind of to judge someone. Just, oh, they're grabbing a condom, and just in the back of your head, it's just kind of like, oh, they're having sexual interactions, and seeing it kind of like a taboo or things like that, which we're all sexual beings. Yep. Instead of like of feeling proud of that person, you know what, that they're taking care of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I try to say, like, when students come up and they're like, oh, I don't need those. I'm like, well, maybe your friends do. Maybe somebody you know, like, take it for somebody else. That's okay. Hey, did you know you can use a condom to keep your sex toys clean? Why don't you try that? You know, so trying to have different conversations around that for sure.
That is one of the approaches that we take as well, because that is one of those things when we try to give out condoms away to people, or just especially, yes, we have seen this in every age gap, I think, but when we approach adults, like not students, but a little bit more like middle age, they still have this type of like condoms. Probably it's because when they were young, that was not such a thing they were not that open related to sexual health. So that is one of those things that we tell them. It's like, if it's not for you, it can be for your friend, for your nephew, for your niece, someone who might need this type of this safe sex materials.
Yeah.
And at the same time, to keep your toys clean. And it's one of those things that we don't talk about, using toys or having a toy, which is one of the safest kind of ways to explore sexuality.
Right.
If we don't want to be intimate with somebody else, or if we think that we're not ready for it, we can definitely explore that with our toys. Yep. The same thing with lubricant. One of the things that we incentivize is like the use of lubricant, and we tell them that the same thing. It's like, if you're not having sexual interactions, masturbating with lubricant feels really good. It feels like, it helps to make more pleasurable the experience. So we see that if we after that, they feel a little bit more comfortable, and to let them, to make sure that they understand that sexual health it's as important as our mental health, physical health, because all of those are connected. And that is one of those things that we want to kind of approach, the connection between those three, that when we are healthy, when it comes to our sexuality, that has an impact on our mental health, emotional health, and of course, physical health. In the county of Santa Clara right now, we have a really high rate of STIs, especially syphilis. Is there something that you've seen around that area and college campus, especially in downtown San Jose, which is this area? The cases of new syphilis cases are really high. Is there an approach that you might see that it might work for us, or for the community in general?
Yeah. So one thing that we're going to be trying coming up this academic school year is offering some free testing on campus in partnership with the Santa Clara County, because we want to try to eliminate as many barriers as possible. So providing the free safer sex materials, scheduling workshops. So instead of waiting for people to request workshops on campus like we normally did, this academic year we'll be scheduling them. So like in November, we're going to have a series of like, I'm calling it Getting Cozy. So it's like different kinds of workshops. It could be like for yourself. It could be for a relationship. It could be for friendships. So we're going to have kind of a variety of different topics. And then piling into that, moving forward, then there will be that free STI testing as well. Because students at San Jose State, they do pay a health fee as part of their tuition, which allows them to come into the wellness center and get services, but not all services are free. And so testing, although it is low cost, there is a cost, and that can be a barrier sometimes. So one thing that we're really thinking about is increasing access for free testing, and then also increasing access to free safer sex supplies, and just talking about things. In one of our workshops, I want to talk about like the fact that like, hey, do you know you could have an STI and you would have no symptoms at all? Like, are you aware of that? Yeah. A lot of students aren't aware of that. They feel like if I don't have symptoms, I'm fine. Which is problematic for a lot of reasons.
Exactly. And one of those things with syphilis, now that we're talking about that one, is that a lot of times we don't get any symptoms. One of those symptoms with syphilis, if you get any, is just like, like a rash that is it's not itchy at all. So you might think that it's just allergic reaction to the soap, to something, and then you might not even pay attention to it. Right. And when it goes away, you're like, okay, cool, I'm okay. But little do you know, you have syphilis, and if you don't take care of that, it can definitely have a huge impact in your physical health. Yeah, which is very interesting. What are some of the things that you might see in like the workshops that it's working out, or that we should kind of approach something in a different way?
So the workshops that we're going to be launching, and one that we have had in the past, is really about communication and boundaries. So that's kind of where we're starting. So really talking about like, how do you communicate your boundaries with a partner, whether that's a romantic partner, a friend, or a family member. Because a lot of our students, because we are a commuter campus, they are still living at home. So it's great practice to practice boundaries with your family, because we all know that families sometimes don't have the best boundaries, and we don't have the best boundaries with them. So we talk a lot about that. And then just like, how do you communicate? How do you say no? And how do you hear a no? So I think like it's a two thing. Like sometimes we're not used to hearing someone say no in a way that we are able to process what is actually happening in that relationship. And that is not necessarily sexual all the time. It could be other things, right? So starting there, and then weaving that into how does that translate into sexual communication. So like I was saying in the beginning, really basics, right? Like, so starting with boundaries, starting with communication and everyday conversation, and then extending that to sexual communication and in relationships. And then one of the other things we're going to talk about is like barrier methods, like how to use condoms, like you were talking before. And I was just having a conversation with someone the other day, and I said, like, what do you do? Like if you put a condom on the wrong way, like it's not the hat, it's the other way, And they're like, oh, you just take it off and you put it back on. And I'm like, no. You get a new one.
Exactly.
Like just those little things that, just talking about that over and over again. Like, okay, this is not a pop quiz. Like, it's okay if you get the wrong answers here while we're in our workshop. We just love you to remember it when you're out in the world. And then, you were talking about mental health and that sort of thing, and tying that in is really important. And I think we also like to talk a lot about alcohol and other drugs and how that can tie in to sexual behaviors. So even like having conversations on maybe you know how to use a condom, but if you've got a couple of drinks in you, then it gets a little trickier. So just having that awareness of how that, simple things can be impacted by that.
Absolutely. And one of those things that we also we have talked about is the fact that sometimes when we find ourselves in this mental state that where we feel alone, we feel that we need some extra attention, it's very easy for us to say yes to something that we don't really want to do. And this is especially with substance use.
Mm-hmm.
If I find myself in a situation when I want to keep my partner, I want to keep them happy, I don't want them to leave me, it's very easy for me to say yes to certain substances. And when we engage in certain substances and then sexual interactions, of course, that's really, it's a higher chance. We have higher chances of contracting HIV and STIs.
Yeah.
What is the information that you all provide related to HIV in particular?
Yeah. So I would say that the education that we provide on HIV is probably more limited to our health services. They do testing, and we do offer PrEP and PEP within the Student Wellness Center. But it is one of my goals to increase the way we talk about that in our health education, which is our first floor in the Wellness Center. And so one of the things that we'll be doing is like for World AIDS Day, having some testing, having a little bit more education on that day, and also making sure that that is something that we're definitely talking about when we're talking about STIs, making sure that that is included in the conversation. It's usually there, but it's not like a big focus. So increasing the focus on that and just making students aware of the services, like the safer sex supplies obviously too, but like I don't think a lot of students know that we offer PrEP and PEP.
Definitely.
On campus.
Absolutely. And one of those things that it's very interesting is that we are in a really good spot related to HIV, meaning that the new cases are really low. We have PrEP and PEP, but at the same time, a lot of people doesn't know what PrEP or PEP is. Like PrEP, we don't know that it's a preventive method, a prevention from contracting HIV. You take a pill daily or you take a shot every 2 months, right, and you're fully protected. Mm-hmm. Or PEP. We see this so often, and then when we ask if they have taken PEP before, they have no idea what PEP is. They have no idea that there's a medical treatment, a treatment where you can definitely prevent HIV after the exposure. Right. Like you have 72 hours to go to the nearest emergency room and request this treatment, which is life-saving. It's something that is very important for us to kind of to put out there. to make sure that to find a way how to communicate this, particularly with we have seen this a lot with the heterosexual community. Their knowledge related to sexual health to these methods is way more limited than the LGBTQ community, which it is. Although we know that the LGBTQ community continues to have a higher chances of contracting HIV, continues to be the most vulnerable community. It's important for us to put that word to just the community in general, because we want to make sure that in the future we don't see cases or we don't see a rise again in HIV.
Right. Yep.
Right. And one of those. What's your plan to put that information out there?
Well, I think incorporating it into workshops, incorporating it into our printed materials, making sure that students are aware of what we offer is one way. Another way is, and one thing that we're trying to do is within the Student Wellness Center, is to work more collaboratively with health services. So we'll have a workshop. We're actually going to have a workshop on menstruation and periods with our PHEs, our peer health educators, and with health services. So a nurse will come down so that we can have those conversations together, so that students don't see us as three separate entities and that we don't communicate, because we do. And making sure that, like if they have a question for us, that they know we're getting that information, from the second floor, from health services. So making sure that it's more of an effort where we're sharing the services and all the things that we offer.
Oh, that's really nice. What about with classes? Have you all worked together with different, because we do work with San Jose State students, which is really nice. It's very enjoyable. But one of the things that we've been trying to do is just to reach out to different departments besides public health. Because, engineers are also having sex. Other majors.
Yep.
With the students, regardless what major you're studying, you're a sexual being. Yep. And we've been looking to see how can we connect with them. How can we connect with the professors? Have you all been trying to work with
that's
them?
tricky. That's tricky.
Yeah.
It's tricky not because there isn't an interest there, but it's because once the semester starts, it is the ticking time bomb. It is busy. Yeah. There's stuff that needs to happen, and so a lot of times faculty are just really busy. But we have ways that we have worked with other departments are workshops, and making sure that they're aware of workshops that we offer, to have them request them in class so they can do that. Another way that we have done that is when we do our recruitment for our peer health educators, we really try hard to not just hire public health majors.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So we have a variety. We have computer science. We have education. And I'm really proud of our incoming PhD class. We have a variety. It is really great, the diversity in their majors and backgrounds. And that's another way that has been very helpful, because when we promote material, we ask them to share this with your classes, share what's going on, make sure that you're because at the beginning of a class, a lot of times professors will be like, does anyone have any announcements? That is a perfect time to be like, hey, we have a workshop coming up, or I work in the health center and we're doing this and this. So we really encourage our peer health educators to share and to post things in their colleges and their clubs. A lot of them are part of other clubs, or they have other jobs on campus. So that's the way that we do that. I'm not sure how helpful that is.
No, it's good. It's
just
getting good.
Getting connected that way.
That is very true. Getting connected is very important. Have you seen any trends among the students? And at the same time, we know that we live in a time where it's easy for us to kind of to be sexually active, meaning going on dating sites. This culture of hooking up. Have you seen any trends, or what is the approach that you have taken, or the approach that you might think that it's the best?
So I would say that sometimes students are hesitant to share they're probably sharing it with each other a lot, but they're not going to be sharing it with me quite so much, which is actually fine with me. It's not that I don't want to know, but I get that that is appropriate, and like I don't want to push comfort levels. But I do hear, of course, about all the different kind of things that are going on. And one thing that has been really important to me is to really approach things with a sex positive approach and make sure that it's not like a shame based, like, if I hear about a student sharing like, oh, they had a hookup or whatever, I'm not like, oh my goodness, are you going to marry that person? Like, I am not going there at all. And actually I don't feel that way personally either. Like, and just approaching it as like more of a harm reduction approach, right? Like, talk to me about your testing plan. Do you know that we offer safer sex supplies? And one thing that we're going to be doing this coming semester too is like programming like sex toy bingo, where it's like, you're going to come in, we're going to play bingo. It's going to be super fun. We're going to provide you some education, and our prizes are going to be sex toys, a variety of different kinds. Because the students are drawn to that kind of thing. They're like, either they're like, I would like to have a sex toy and they're expensive and I can't afford it. Or they're like, oh, this feels kind of like forbidden and I want to check it out. We're welcoming any approach to like that. Like, come on in, let's talk about it. We're gonna teach you some stuff while you're here having a really good time, and then you can pick from some prizes. Also honoring the fact that some students might not want a sex toy, so let's have some stuffed animals there too, or different varieties, making sure that it's inclusive too. I think that's the other thing is approaching it like there's not one way to have sex, right? There's a lot of different ways. And so we're going to make sure that the printed materials that we're supplying are inclusive. We're making sure that the safer sex options are inclusive. And so just making sure, and then sex toy bingo, we're offering a lot of different things. And also just approaching that, like we talked about it before, but like backing up, like, okay, let's even talk a little bit about self-pleasure, right? Like what works for you. And trying to reduce some of the shame in that, because if you're able to be in control of your own pleasure, then that creates a whole different level when you're in a relationship.
Correct. And one of those things that we have noticed, the LGBTQ community feels more comfortable in dating sites, meaning that of course they don't have the privilege to go to, to any place and say, oh, that person is gay as well. It's challenging to feel comfortable outdoors and start that interaction. So it's way easier to go on a dating site and say like, oh, in their profiles they're gay or they're part of the LGBTQ community. So it's easier for them for the LGBTQ community to interact that way. But at the same time, we have noticed that a good amount of people who comes to us to get tested while doing the HIV counseling portion, the number of sexual partners is more than 10, which is fully fine. However, we try to approach that topic of the reason behind our actions. Sometimes we say like, oh, have you gotten tested? It's fine. So we focus on that medical portion, which is really good. But at the same time, it's kind of important to focus on the mental portion, because why are we developing that behavior? Is it we want to explore our sexuality, or is it because we feel lonely or we are in a depression that we kind of want to fulfill that kind of emptiness that is that we feel? We are constantly looking for that acceptance, or we're looking for someone to make us feel a little bit that we care, that they care for us, or that we want to feel that love, even if it's just for a little bit, and then suddenly we find ourselves in this cycle. And it's kind of one of those topics that we really find ourselves very interested in, to kind of provide that information to them, to be like, okay, yes, it's awesome to explore your sexuality. However, to be aware, why are we doing sexual? Why are we interacting sexual and sexual behavior? How do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important, and I think what it spurs for me when I'm listening to you talk is exploring ways to connect with people that maybe are not just sex.
Okay.
So I think that is something that we're definitely wanting to have in our workshops as well, and have our peer health educators talking about are other ways to connect. Because I agree. Sometimes, from my perspective, our students are young, they're learning, and they might be under the impression that the way you connect with someone is to have sex with that person.
Correct. That is one of those things. And it's just, it's to kind of understand or when to say, like how to say no, as you mentioned. And how to, one of those things that you mentioned earlier is that to accept hearing no, how to
hear the no. Yeah,
exactly. Which is, it's very interesting. And it's really nice to kind of to be aware of like, of how to learn how to say no and how to accept it. Yeah. Like, you know what, I'm not ready for this. And even though people are doing it out there, and even though it's something common, I don't feel comfortable. Or if I do it, to check in. To be like, you know what, I did this. How do I feel? Not only physically, not only like that word of like, oh, I might have contracted an STI or HIV, but how do I feel emotionally? How did that make me feel? Right. Am I okay? One of those things that we talk about, like, you know, dating sites, how when we are on a dating site, which is that it's more common than before, we post the best photo out there. You know, just like we're going to make sure that we look like a model. We need a couple of filters, you know, a couple of touches, nice. However, it's we might not look like that every day. Right. We might not look like that, or we're just waking up. You know, like it can be another reality. So it just kind of interacting or like having that idea that if I see someone in a profile and I see that picture, I create this idea that they have to look like this. And once we meet, we realize that they don't look like specific just like in the photo, and suddenly we find ourselves in this situation where we're like, oh, we're not that attracted to you anymore. So might as well, I'm just going to block you, or I'm not going to respond to you. On the other side, this person who got blocked or they didn't hear anything from the other person, their self-esteem is getting hit, like it's a slap across the face. Right. You know, our emotions. Am I not good enough for this person? They're not answering to me anymore. What's happening to me? I'm not like good enough. That could lead into a situation when we're like, okay, so let me lower my standards. You know, let me just if I said no to smoking with this person, but I find them really attractive, I don't want to happen the same thing that happened to the other one. So let me just smoke with this person to kind of like to fit in, to keep an attached. And suddenly you find yourself in another situation escalating to a point that your self-esteem is in a really uncomfortable situation. Your mental health, it's not in a great place. And this is because we did not check in. Right. Because we didn't know how to do that. We know about dating sites. We know that they are not available, but we don't really talk about the impact that it might have if we know what to do in a situation like that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, when you were talking, what I was thinking about too is just like social media, right? Like how, when we're on social media and we're taking photos or we're sharing things, we're sharing the best of the best, not the real, not the real stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And so to me, it just reminds me of like our relationships, not just romantic relationships, but even with people, is realizing that everybody has flaws and what are your negotiables and what are not. So, it's okay to not be okay with certain things, right? Like if you feel like it violates your morals or where you are as a person, I think that's really important to listen to, like that inside voice that tells you and kind of guides you. But I also think it's really important to be like, okay, is it that inside voice, or is it just that I'm expecting something from somebody that I would never expect of myself? This really unrealistic ideal. So I think it's just being open to realizing what expectations can be, because really, if you have really high expectations, it can lead to a lot of disappointment. and going into something and like, you know, sometimes you go into an experience and you're like, oh, it's going to be a certain way in your head. And then it's not. And it's just so devastating. And it's like hearing that no when you thought like it was going to go a certain way can be so devastating that, you know, maybe bad choices get made, or maybe you just like, you leave just that feeling like that wasn't how I wanted it to go. But that's normal. Like it is very normal for that to happen. And it is very much okay to be disappointed.
Correct. That is very true. And to notice, you know, your disappointment.
Yep.
To feel it, to live it, to be, you know what? Yes, I feel disappointed, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. It's part of it. And at the same time, expectations. One of those things is like to not have expectations, to try to avoid have that expectation. You know what? Because it's going to make your experience less enjoyable. Because if they're not you know, meeting the expectations, you're already in that state of mind of you're like, oh, it's not going as I planned. So it's very easy to not enjoy your experience, to not find something enjoyable. And one of those things that I felt that it's Disney has a lot to do with this. Because, you know, like the movies in general, that it has to be a certain way.
Right.
I have to meet this person a certain way. Now, this person has to be perfect.
Right.
You know, like, or it has to treat me nice, all that stuff, all those things that we see in the movies, that in reality, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
No one's perfect. Right. You know, we, in a relationship, we have to work as a team. We have to make sure that we understand the other person. We have to make sure that we are different and in certain ways, and it's okay. I like certain things. We don't like to like, we don't have to like every single thing. It's we can be just you can be my other half, but without having to be all the time together, to like everything. So that is what complements us. And we, of course, as long as we are not getting hurt in certain ways, because that is one of those things that we have to kind of understand, that being in an unhealthy relationship and accepting somebody as they are, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, and I think that's a really big part of it, like expectations, sure, yeah. But then also realizing that like there are unhealthy things that you're going to want to keep an eye on. So really talking about unhealthy and healthy relationships, and like different, you know, red flags for things, and really keeping an eye on that, because of course someone else is not in charge of your happiness. You're in charge of your own happiness.
That is a really, really good quote right there.
Yeah.
It's very true.
Yeah. But we can get sucked into some unhealthy dynamics sometimes. And I think that that's a really big component to sexual health, is making sure that you're aware of not only how to have safe sex and how to do that safely, but also realizing that even if you're having safe sex, what is that relationship like? Is it a healthy relationship? What is the dynamic like?
Correct. That is very true. And when going back to sexual health, is one of those things that even if we're hooking up, right? Even if it's just a one night stand, to understand that the other person is also a human being.
Yes.
You know, to be aware of that, to say like, you know what, they're going through their certain things. I'm going to make sure that I respect them, even if I'm never going to see them again.
Yeah.
Even if it's just like I have never met them before, to make sure that we make them feel comfortable. Yeah. You know, we engage in some kind of interaction with them, even if it's just sexual. You know, just like kind of to make them feel that that's to make them feel good. Yeah. And to understand, to listen to them, and it's really important. So anything else that you would like to add to that?
I'm trying to think. No, I think I feel pretty good about that. One thing that I feel like we kind of touched on, but like I feel like would be kind of great to talk about is, and I'm going to flip into a kind of a binary conversation here, which I don't normally do because I really don't like that. But there is a big, kind of a big theme around women's pleasure being controlled by men. And so I could phrase it differently. I could say people with vaginas, vulvas, their pleasure being controlled by someone with a penis, right? Like that's the only way that you can have pleasure. And so I think it's really important to also, when we were talking earlier about your own self-pleasure and figuring out what works well for you, is to give people, whether it's someone that identifies as a woman or a man, someone with a vulva, someone with a penis, like giving them the power to realize that their pleasure and figuring out what works for them is something that they're in control of. And it doesn't need to be, you don't need to wait on someone else to tell you.
That is so true. And that is one of those things that we have heard before that, and it's so interesting how, historically, we have seen that men get the pleasure, just like people with a penis is just like, go at it. That's it. As long as they're satisfied, they don't really care about what's happening with the person with the vagina.
Right.
It's like, okay, I'm done. This is it. But at the same time, to take control of that, just, you know what? And at the same time, if that person with a vagina needs to kind of like lead the other person, you know what? This is how I like it.
Right.
This is how it is. This is how I find pleasure. That's how I enjoy having sexual interaction.
Yep.
Let's find a way how to do it. It's very important for us to talk about that.
Yeah.
Because we don't really talk about it.
Right.
It's something that it's not there. And a lot of people with a vagina, they have never experienced what an orgasm is.
Right.
Which is crazy. It's something that is just like, it's a part of being a sexual being. And it is for us, as society, and particularly those with a penis, or those who interact with someone with a vagina, to kind of not understand this, and for them to just be egocentric. It's not the word, to be selfish enough, to not have that in consideration, to say like, you know what, I already found pleasure. I'm good.
Right.
Yeah. And
and that's the old definition. Like, let's throw away that definition of what sex is, right?
Exactly.
And even for heterosexual couples, like it can be something else. It can be more than just that. So like just having that conversation, which I think is important for inclusion, but also just for heterosexual couples too. Like penis and vagina is not the only way to have sex, by the way.
There you go. That's so true. That is very true. Yeah. There's so many ways. And one of the things that I remember somebody told me is that we humans are the only animals that have sex with our minds, meaning that we use our minds to kind of like have that interaction, which it's beautiful. We have to understand that. We have to make sure that we don't, we kind of like break that cycle of thinking that it's just only, there has to have some kind of penetration, and it has to be just like this. It has to be just missionary. That's the only way. Yeah. To find different ways to make sure that it's unique and it works for you and your partner, and to explore that, to make sure that we feel comfortable exploring certain ways how to pleasure ourselves. While respecting ourselves, making sure that we're comfortable. And again, and that is another topic about, kinks. Mm-hmm. If I want to be disrespected, if I want to be treated as this, go for it.
Yes.
Go for it.
Yes.
As again,
you're communicating.
Exactly.
Yes.
And as long as when you go back and when you realize you say like, damn, that was good, instead of like, oh, what have I done? Yeah. Like, why did I do this? To feel that kind of feeling, to kind of check in again. Right. And say like, why am I having this feeling? Why am I having this kind of regret? Instead of saying like, wow, that was good. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. To check in. That's really important as well. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. So I think that's it. Again, thank you very much for this conversation.